King's Quest 5. Oh man, this one's one that I remember. Good deal. I think it's actually the first King's Quest game I probably truly owned. Probably. I could be mistaken on that, but this was released in November 9th in 1990. And I should say it had two versions released. The first one was, of course, the the original, and then it had a talkie version, which in those days they didn't think to give talkies to text boxes for reading and or closed captioning. It is, of course, as the title denotes, the fifth game in the King's Quest franchise. It's actually the last game that we have Graham as a protagonist in the game. It's also pretty much the first game to have a story that ties other entries to the franchise together. I mean, King's Quest IV basically took off where King's Quest III left off, but King's Quest V, however, well, the story is that one day Graham is out for a walk, and while he's out on this walk, the wizard Mordok comes and steals the castle, shrinking it down to be small enough to fit in a jar. And also small enough that he can pick up and hold Alexander in his hand. Now, of course, when Graham returns home and sees the castle is gone, he is informed of what was happened, but not why, by Cedric, who has come to be known as probably one of the most annoying characters in gaming. Well, let's face it, Cedric is a coward. And while he's an owl, he's a chicken. And anyhow, Cedric takes Graham to the land of Serenia, which is also featured in a game called The Wizard and the Princess, which is a very early Sierra release. Where he meets Crispin, the wizard. And Crispin basically gives Graham something to help him, and Graham must now venture around Serenia, getting everything he needs and helping out individuals. Always help individuals who are in need of help. Now, of course, he must, of course, go to town, find something in town. He must help out the local animals. This is important because they will help you out later. I mean, you can get a honeycomb from the bees and Queen Beatrice. The ants will help you get something if you help them, and King Antony. You will then, of course, get a chance to head out into the desert, which is dangerous. All deserts are dangerous. This is one of those that you have only, like, you could only go so many screens before you have to take a drink of water or you'll die. You will find a bandit's camp. You will find where they head off to keep their treasure. So you'll have to get in there and get something from there. Or two somethings, I should say. I think it's two somethings. You only have a short time to get in and out. Then you will have to venture into the dark forest to defeat the witch there. You'll need something to protect yourself in there. Then you must continue on and take do some trades in town so that you can progress over the mountains, where you will meet the Ice Queen and help her get rid of a Yeti. Then you could continue crossing the mountains, get caught by a rock. I think it was a rock. And then escape the nest, get on down to sea, take a boat to an island of harpies, which injures Cedric. Get what you need there, get off that island. Before getting help for Cedric and then having a helpful mermaid lead you to Mordak's castle, or at least his island, where you will have to use everything you've gotten to this point to get past the traps and sneak into the castle. You will have to work through a maze. Yes, we have a maze. Get certain things you need in the maze. Get through the maze. And meet a young lady who has been trapped on the island, so to speak. Princess Cosima. And after assuring her that you mean her no ill will, she will be an aid to you. And that aid will be helpful because you will need to get captured. And you'll need someone to be able to help you out. They can only do this once. Then you must sneak through Mordak's castle, trapping his two henchmen. One being the Blue Meanie, the other being his brother, Mananan, who is now a cat. And of course, whose fault is that Mananan is a cat? Alexander's. In fact, that is why Mordak had captured your family and your castle. He wants Alexander to turn Mananan back, but Alexander doesn't know how to do it. So as you sneak about, you must sneak into Mordak's laboratory. Well, no, his library, to find out about how to use magic, and then wait for him to fall asleep. So you could steal his wand and transfer power from that wand to Crispin, to the old wand Crispin gives you. And of course, then you will have to duel Mordak, in which every spell you've read becomes something that you will need in this battle. To which, again, the defeat when you defeat Mordak there, you will be rewarded with a happy reunion. And of course, Graham calls out his son on who's got us all into this mess in the first place. Alexander will become smitten with Cosima, and Crispin will return everybody to where they belong, and the castle. And that pretty much sums up the story of the game. There is no alternate ending, I don't think. It is also obvious that you can easily soft lock yourself, because if you go forward without certain things, you'll either die or you will fail miserably. If you don't help the animals out, it will come to bite you in the ass in the long run. The game is this game didn't necessarily have any professional voice acting, because it was the first time it was done in a Sierra game. So they basically use staff from around from the company to do voices and everything. Roberta Williams has a role in it. I think even Laurie Cole has a voice in it. Even Cedric's voice is one of the people who did other things at Sierra. Of course, this was new ground, definite new ground, and they waited until the CD version to do that. Now, of course, this game also has certain things that happen in animated sections, which gives you the option of skipping. And if you skip, you miss key story points, but you have to check your inventory to see what you've gotten afterwards. So I definitely recommend you don't skip, because you'll probably look at stuff like, "What is this?" And if you're playing the CD version, which is pretty much the only version that I think is available on certain sites, I don't know. Uh, you end up missing a good set of dialogue. So you really have to. It helps to explain things. You help an elf out, and you get some nice shoes, which you can sell to a shopkeep in town and get something in return. Something that might not be so fancy, but could be useful later. You help an animal, and they'll help you out later. I mean, if you don't save a rat, you'll end up stuck when you go into the inn, which is a shame, because the inn does have something you need. And well, the innkeeper's not too honest. This was the first game to use the point and click interface. That became the norm for several Sierra games after this one. And you can tell that they really got it to work well. And of course, like when you're just getting with the voice area, you're, learning things as you go. And this was actually a fine attempt. It is also should be noted that of course, with defeat, this also sets up things for the sixth game, allowing you to now to give Alexander a love interest, one he will eventually marry, but that's in the next game. And the story this is a very good story for this game. It's a good game. Ironically enough, when Sierra released a pinball collection through Dynamix, one of the tables was a need for King's Quest V, which helps put everything in a perspective of how you should do things. So if you've never played King's Quest V but played the Take a Break pinball series, you'd get an idea of how the game is supposed to go. This is also one of the few Sierra games to actually be ported to a home system. I think the first King's Quest got ported to a Sega system. I'm not sure, but this game got ported to Nintendo, which of course they had to alter some things, and I think it was done through Konami working together with Sierra. So they had to, of course, go by the Nintendo guidelines and censor certain things, keep things simpler or something. So, if you got introduced to this franchise by King's Quest V on the Nintendo Entertainment System, well, you could see that the computer had a nicer graphic output than the NES, because the NES was 8-bit and they had to tone down certain things. Now, is this a good entry? It's a relatively good entry in my opinion. I mean, it obviously can be outshined by later entries in the franchise and quality of art. And being the first King's Quest game with voice, you know, they couldn't afford big names yet. So, it's a very good attempt at the first time to talk in the game like that. And they do a very good job at keeping some of the traditional King's Quest tropes going, like a more peaceful way, avoid killing, which gets shied away from in later entries, so to speak. You get rewarded for doing a good deed, which is nice. You get to see certain characters get the appropriate comeuppance that they deserve. The magic duel at the end is a nice little battle of wits, so to speak, because you have to use the right spell to counter Mordak's spell each time. And once you use a spell, it's out of play. 4 spells, so technically by that combination, you got 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is basically 24 combinations of what order to use them in. Of course, if you make the wrong choice at any step, well, the chain breaks. So obviously, it's not as straightforward as that. So that is basically all I can really say on King's Quest V. Overall, it's very, it still follows some of the tropes of, well, you don't want to leave anything behind. You want to make sure you've done everything because there's no going back once you advance through certain spots in the game. I mean, once you go over the mountains, there's no going back. Every area sort of becomes its own mini section. So if you screwed up and forgot something, well, you're screwed. If you forgot to get, say, a crystal on the mountain, you will not be able to progress. If you don't buy a cape, well, obviously you're not going to cross the mountain. If you don't go, if you don't get the magic, get something in the desert and go into the forest first, you're not going to progress. It's easy to get soft locked if you do something wrong. And that's something they don't get out of until later entries, later Sierra games. But that's all I'm going to say about King's Quest V. Like I said, it's a good game. Great game. Is it the best of the franchise? No, it's not the best by a long run. In fact, some of the earlier games seem to stand a little bit better than this one. Some. But, it's good entry in the franchise. It's Graham's last outing. So, of course, hey, rescue the family, rescue the castle. A fitting outing for Graham's last outing. And that's all, like I said, that's all I'm going to say. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk about King's Quest V. I do recommend you play the game. And until next time, this is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. Bye!